When a man starts to beg for attention, something inside him quietly begins to die, his dignity, his energy, his self-worth. You might think that reaching out, texting first, calling again, explaining yourself one more time will somehow change how she feels. You think, asterisk maybe if I show her I care more, she'll realize my value. Asterisk, but the truth is, the more you chase, the smaller you look in her eyes. A woman is not drawn to a man who places her above himself. She's drawn to a man who respects himself enough to walk away from what doesn't honor him. When you beg for attention, you're telling her, asterisk, you complete me, asterisk. And the moment you make her your source of validation, you lose all control. She no longer sees your strength, she sees your need. She stops seeing a man, she sees a boy waiting to be chosen. Women are naturally drawn to masculine energy that leads, not pleads. And the difference between the two is simple. One stands firm in who he is, the other bends out of fear of losing her. A man who values his presence doesn't chase after anyone's absence. He knows that silence is not rejection, it's redirection. If she's distant, he doesn't panic. He doesn't bombard her with messages asking what went wrong. He gives her the space to miss him, because deep down, he knows his worth doesn't shrink just because someone stopped noticing it. That kind of composure, that calm strength is rare, and it's magnetic. You see, attention that has to be begged for will never feel fulfilling. You'll always be waiting for the next reply, the next compliment, the next sign that you matter. It becomes emotional starvation disguised as love. But when you detach from that need, something powerful happens. You reclaim your peace. You stop reacting to her silence, and you start responding to your purpose. You stop waiting for her to text, and you start focusing on the life you're building. The irony is, that's when she starts to notice. Because energy doesn't lie. A man who is desperate gives off a vibration of lack. He's chasing what he believes he doesn't have. But a man who is grounded, who moves like his value is constant, radiates abundance. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to be loud. His quiet confidence says everything. That energy makes people, not just women, lean in. So if you find yourself waiting for her message, wondering if she's thinking about you, stop and ask yourself, asterisk, what version of me would she miss? Asterisk, the man who begged, or the man who knew he was enough before she came along. Because the truth is, no one can love you in a way that makes you feel worthy if you haven't learned to give that love to yourself first. When you stop begging for attention, you create a shift. You stop operating from fear, fear of being ignored, fear of being replaced, fear of being alone, and you start moving from power. You become selective with your energy. You start to see who deserves access to you, not who's willing to give you crumbs of affection. And when she sees that version of you, the one who's no longer waiting, no longer needing, no longer chasing, she feels something she can't explain. Respect, curiosity, maybe even regret, because the moment you stop asking for her time is the moment she starts wondering if she still deserves yours. That's what makes her come back, not the messages, not the effort, not the promises. It's the strength she feels when she realizes you've stopped needing her validation to breathe. You've become what every woman truly craves, a man whose value doesn't depend on her attention. And when you reach that level, you'll never have to beg again because your presence will always be enough. When you find yourself constantly explaining who you are, what you meant, or why you did something, understand this: you're giving away your power. The need to over-explain doesn't come from love or honesty. It comes from insecurity. It's born out of the fear that if you don't justify every action, every silence, every word, you'll lose her. But here's the truth most men never understand. When you start explaining yourself too much, you stop being understood and start being evaluated. And no man should live his life trying to be understood by someone who has already decided not to see him clearly. You don't need to write essays to prove your intentions. A man who is sure of himself doesn't defend every choice, he stands by it. When you feel the urge to explain, pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to protect? Often, it's not the relationship you're protecting, it's your image in her eyes. You want her to see that you're not the villain, that your heart was pure, that your effort was real. But that constant need to clarify everything ends up showing her that your peace depends on her approval. And once you give someone that kind of control, you'll never truly be at ease. Think about it. The most confident men don't rush to correct every misunderstanding. They let their actions speak over time. They trust that the truth doesn't need defending, it just needs consistency. If someone truly wants to understand you, they will, and if they don't, no amount of explaining will ever be enough. The more you talk, the more you dilute your presence. The more you chase understanding, the less you are understood. Because words, when overused, lose their weight. When a woman feels your energy, she's not listening to your paragraphs, she's feeling your tone, your conviction, your peace. If your energy says, I need you to believe me, she feels pressure. But if your energy says, I know who I am, she feels curiosity. That's the difference between trying to prove yourself and simply being yourself. The first one drains you. The second one draws her in. You don't need to justify silence either. Sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful thing you can do. Silence shows self-control. It shows maturity. It shows that you're not going to let emotions drag you into explanations that cheapen your truth. When you stay quiet instead of over-explaining, you communicate something much stronger. I trust myself. I trust my side of the story. Because a man who is grounded in his truth doesn't panic when he's misunderstood. He knows that time reveals everything: intentions, loyalty, and character. The wrong people will twist your words no matter how carefully you speak. The right ones will understand your silence. Over-explaining also kills attraction. It removes mystery. It removes polarity. When you keep telling her what you meant, what you feel, what she should think, you rob her of the natural desire to figure you out. You become predictable, emotionally exposed, too available. And no woman is drawn to a man who needs her to constantly validate his version of reality. She's drawn to a man who says what he means once calmly, clearly, and then continues walking forward. That doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you become certain. You speak when needed, not when pressured. You respond, not react. You hold eye contact instead of defending yourself with endless words. You make your point once, and then let your consistency do the talking. So stop explaining your worth. Stop proving your loyalty. Stop trying to be understood by someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. Let your calmness be your statement. Let your peace be your argument. When you stand firm in your truth, you won't need to convince anyone of anything. And that's when people start listening differently, not because you talked louder, but because your silence started carrying weight. That's the quiet confidence that keeps a woman thinking about you long after the conversation ends. When a man starts competing for a woman's validation, he loses the very essence that made him attractive in the first place. You were never supposed to fight for her approval. You were supposed to lead with your authenticity, your purpose, your peace. The moment you start trying to impress her, prove you're better than her past, or constantly compare yourself to other men, you step out of your masculine frame and into insecurity. You hand her your power and silently say, asterisk, tell me I'm enough. Asterisk, and once that happens, she doesn't see confidence anymore. She sees a man who doubts his own value. True masculine energy doesn't chase validation, it commands respect through presence. A man who knows who he is doesn't need to compete, he creates. He builds, he stays focused on his purpose, not on her reactions. He doesn't try to outshine anyone because he's already comfortable standing in his own light. The second you start looking around to see who she's giving attention to, you've already lost yourself. You start to move like a shadow instead of a source. When you base your worth on how much she admires you, you put her on a throne that was never meant for her. She becomes your mirror, and your reflection depends on her mood. If she's warm, you feel strong. If she's distant, you feel small. That kind of emotional dependency will exhaust you, and eventually it will repel her. Because a woman might be flattered when a man competes for her at first, but deep down she craves the one who doesn't need to, the one who makes her feel safe just by being grounded in who he is. You don't win respect by being loud or overly nice. You win it by being consistent, by showing that your world doesn't revolve around being chosen. When you start to compete for validation, you stop being the prize. You start to behave like a follower in your own story. You measure your worth through reactions, her replies, her tone, her interest, and before you know it, your self-esteem is tied to something that was never stable to begin with. Understand this. Her validation should be a reflection of what you already believe about yourself, not the source of it. When you truly know your value, her attention becomes a blessing, not a requirement. You no longer get jealous when she talks about her past because you're not competing with anyone's memory. You're too focused on the man you're becoming today. The masculine energy that draws women in is not desperate to be seen. It's comfortable being observed. It doesn't perform, it asterisk exists. Asterisk, so the next time you feel that impulse to prove your worth, to send another message, to show her what she's missing, to compete with someone else, stop. Breathe, ask yourself, asterisk, am I doing this from power or from fear? Asterisk, because love built on fear will always crumble. You can't win her respect by chasing her validation. You win it by respecting yourself enough to walk away from anything that makes you question your value. When you stop competing, you shift the dynamic. She starts feeling your energy differently. She starts wondering why you're so calm, so unbothered, so focused. That calmness becomes your advantage. You're not cold, you're composed. You're not arrogant, you're assured. And that kind of presence pulls her in stronger than any performance ever could. Remember, a man's power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being asterisk aligned. Asterisk aligned with his mission, his boundaries, his sense of self. The moment you stop needing anyone's validation, you become free, and freedom is the most attractive state a man can embody. Because when you stand firm in your own value, you're not asking the world to see your worth. You're reminding it that your worth was never up for debate. Emotional control is one of the rarest and most powerful qualities a man can possess. In a world where everyone reacts instantly to messages, to silence, to rejection, the man who stays calm becomes unforgettable. He becomes the eye of the storm. When you lose emotional control around a woman, when you argue, plead, or explode just because she pulled away or tested your patience, you show her that your emotions control asterisk you, asterisk and no woman. feels safe with a man who can't handle his own emotions. You have to understand women will test you, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. She wants to feel your strength, not through aggression, but through stability. She wants to know that when things get hard, you won't collapse under pressure. Emotional control isn't about being emotionless. It's about being in command of your reactions. It's about having storms inside you, but choosing calm on the surface. Because your ability to stay centered when she's chaotic is what earns her respect, not your ability to shout louder. When you lose your temper, you lose your frame. When you lose your frame, you lose her trust, and once trust is gone, attraction soon follows. A man who constantly reacts gives away his power in small doses. Every time you raise your voice, argue to win, or let her words trigger you, you're saying, asterisk, you control how I feel. Asterisk, and whether you realize it or not, that admission kills polarity. Because deep down, she doesn't want to control you, she wants to asterisk feel safe with you. Asterisk control doesn't mean you never feel anger, jealousy, or pain. It means you feel them, acknowledge them, but you don't asterisk act asterisk from them, you act from your higher self. When she says something that would have normally set you off, and you take a deep breath instead, that's power. When she pulls away and you resist the urge to chase, that's strength. When you feel emotional but you respond with composure, you're no longer reacting from insecurity, you're responding from confidence. The calm man doesn't need to prove anything in an argument. He knows that silence often speaks louder than emotion. He knows that peace is not weakness, it's discipline, and that discipline becomes magnetic because in your stillness she senses security. She sees that your emotions don't control you, asterisk you asterisk control them. A man who can control his emotions is dangerous not because he's aggressive, but because he's unpredictable in the most grounded way. You can't manipulate him with silence. You can't bait him into arguments. You can't make him chase validation. He doesn't respond to emotional games. He responds to energy. And that kind of man stands out because he doesn't play by anyone else's emotional rhythm. He sets his own. The truth is, emotional control isn't something you gain once, it's something you practice daily. You earn it every time you choose peace over panic, presence over impulse, purpose over reaction. You earn it in how you handle rejection, how you handle disrespect, and how you handle distance. Every test is a chance to prove that you are bigger than your emotions, that your masculinity isn't fragile, and that your composure is not for sale. When you master emotional control, people treat you differently, arguments fade quicker, respect grows naturally. Even silence becomes your ally because you no longer fear it. You start to move through the world with quiet confidence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that commands it. And that's the kind of energy no woman can walk away from easily. Because deep down, every woman is drawn to the man who makes her feel safe, not by protecting her from the world, but by showing that he can protect asterisk himself asterisk from his own emotions. When you reach that level of control, you don't chase, you don't panic, and you don't break. You simply observe, decide, and move forward with peace. That's the real power, not in shouting louder, not in winning arguments, but in mastering the battlefield within you. Because when you can stay calm in chaos, no one can take your power away, and that's when you become unforgettable. There's a difference between loving a woman and trying to save her. When you love, you support, you guide, you inspire. But when you try to save, you lose yourself in her pain. You start carrying burdens that aren't yours to hold. You start thinking that if you just give more, fix more, explain more, she'll finally see how much you care. But that's not love, That's attachment disguised as purpose. And the painful truth is, the more you try to fix a woman, the more she resists your help. Because deep down, she doesn't want to be asterisk fixed asterisk by you. She wants to be asterisk understood asterisk by you, seen by you, respected by you. A strong man doesn't rescue, he reflects. He doesn't step into her chaos trying to solve it. He stands in his calmness and lets her find stability through his presence. You are not supposed to be her therapist, her healer, or her savior. You are supposed to be her mirror, showing her the version of herself that can rise. When you start solving all her problems, you unconsciously tell her she's weak, that she can't survive without you. But when you stand firm, grounded in your own balance, you remind her of her own strength. It's easy to mistake overgiving for love. You might think, asterisk, if I do everything for her, she'll realize I'm the one who truly cares. Asterisk, but the truth is, when you give too much, when you constantly try to make her happy, fix her moods, or protect her from her own lessons, you rob her of growth, you take away the very pain that would have shaped her. Sometimes love means letting her fall. Sometimes love means stepping back, even when your instinct tells you to step closer. A woman will never respect a man who sacrifices his self-respect in the name of love. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who lives for her. She wants a man who lives for asterisk, something bigger than her. Asterisk, your purpose, your discipline, your peace, that's what inspires her. That's what makes her feel safe. When she sees that you won't lose yourself trying to please her, she begins to trust you more. Because if you can stay strong in front of her storms, she knows you can lead through life's storms too. Don't confuse empathy with overextension. Be kind, yes. Be patient, yes. But never at the cost of your boundaries. If she's going through something, listen but don't absorb. Support but don't drown. Love but don't lose yourself. Because the moment you start living her emotions, you forget how to live your own. You start reacting to her moods instead of leading with your vision. And over time, that imbalance will drain both of you. What women truly crave is not a man who carries their pain, but one who helps them remember their strength. When she sees you standing calm while she's emotional, she starts to mirror that energy. Your peace becomes contagious. Your stability becomes her comfort. But if you always rush to fix things, she'll never learn to handle them herself, and you'll end up resenting her for depending on you too much. So instead of trying to save her, asterisk inspire her. Asterisk instead of trying to change her, asterisk elevate yourself. Asterisk let your actions remind her what strength looks like. Let your discipline speak louder than your promises. When she's lost, don't jump into her confusion. Stand where you are and let her find you through your steadiness. Because a woman feels most secure not with the man who says, asterisk, I'll fix it for you, asterisk, but with the man whose presence silently says, asterisk, you can handle this, and I'll be here while you do. Asterisk, love isn't about rescuing, it's about rising together, and that only happens when you refuse to play savior and choose to be a leader. The kind of man who doesn't get pulled into emotional chaos but guides it toward calm, the kind of man who doesn't trade his purpose for approval. When you hold that energy, she'll never forget it. Because every woman remembers the man who didn't try to fix her. He simply reminded her she was never broken. The greatest mistake a man can make in love is forgetting who he is. When you fall for a woman and slowly let her become your world, you stop being the man she was drawn to in the first place. She was attracted to your focus, your drive, your independence, the way you moved through life with purpose before she arrived. But when you start to build your identity around her, when you start to seek her approval before making decisions, you trade your strength for security. And that's when the attraction begins to fade, because a woman can't stay in love with a man who abandons himself to love her. The foundation of masculine energy is direction, a sense of where you're going and why. The moment you lose that direction, you lose your gravity. You start revolving around her instead of your mission. Every message, every silence, every mood begins to control you. You start asking yourself, asterisk, what does she want from me? Asterisk, instead of asterisk, what do I want from life? Asterisk, and that's how men lose their edge. Not because women take their power, but because they hand it over willingly in the name of love. You have to understand something. Your purpose must always come first, not because you don't care about her, but because without your purpose, you can't truly care for her. A man who forgets his vision becomes emotionally dependent. He becomes reactive, anxious, unsure, but a man anchored in his purpose moves differently. He walks with quiet confidence. He doesn't need validation because his fulfillment comes from within. And that's what makes him magnetic, his self-containment. When you stop prioritizing your goals, you lose more than your ambition, you lose your energy. You start feeling drained because you've replaced progress with obsession. You wake up thinking about her instead of thinking about your path. You start measuring your days by how she treats you instead of by how much you've grown. That's not love, that's emotional slavery. Because the truth is, a woman will never fully respect a man who needs her more than he needs his mission. She wants to feel asterisk, chosen asterisk, not asterisk depended on. Asterisk, keeping your identity doesn't mean being distant or detached. It means being centered. It means you can love her deeply and still have a life outside of her. You can give her attention without abandoning your goals. You can be emotionally available without being emotionally consumed. When she sees that balance in you, that you can love her without losing yourself, she feels safer with you. Because she knows that your strength doesn't come from her presence, it comes from your direction. The irony is, when you stop making her your whole world, she naturally wants to be a bigger part of it. Because women are drawn to men who have something going on, something they're passionate about, something that fuels them. When she sees that your time is valuable, your goals are alive, and your energy is focused, she starts chasing your attention again. You become a challenge not through manipulation, but through your natural drive. So remind yourself who you were before her, the man who had a purpose, who took care of his body, who respected his boundaries, who didn't settle for mediocrity. Bring him back. Build your peace. Build your strength. Because when you return to yourself, everything else falls into place. Love becomes lighter, connection becomes deeper, and your presence becomes stronger. Never lose yourself trying to keep someone else. If she truly belongs in your life, she'll meet you on your path, not pull you off it. And if she leaves because you chose to stay focused, then understand this. She wasn't walking away from love, she was walking away from your growth. But you can't slow down your evolution just to make someone comfortable, so stay true to your path. Keep your standards high, protect your energy, because when you know who you are, you stop chasing love, and love starts chasing you. That's the paradox most men never realize. The woman who once pulled away will come back the moment you return to yourself. Because the most attractive thing you can ever be is asterisk you asterisk, fully aligned, unapologetically focused, and completely at peace with who you are.